Mr. Secretary?
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod, members of the City Planning Commission. This is the review session of the City Planning Commission for March 16, 2015. First item today is the Seward Park mixed-use development, which is a minor modification of the design controls applicable to sites 1 and 2 of the Seward Park large-scale general development. Presenting the application is Joel Kolkman from our Manhattan office.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is an application by the Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development for a minor modification to the Seward Park large-scale general development. The application specifically seeks approval to modify the design controls applicable to sites 1 and 5 of the Seward Park LSGD located in the Lower East Side within Manhattan Community District 3. The Seward Park LSGD special permit was approved by the Commission in August 2012, and this was after an over 3-year community planning process that involved a broad range of stakeholders, including city agencies, local elected officials, Manhattan Community Board 3, and Lower East Side residents. The approval created the zoning and land use framework for the Seward Park mixed-use development project, which is a 1.65, or will be, a 1.65 million square foot mixed-use development. In total, the project will be built on 9 sites. 3 of the sites are located on the east side of Essex Street, on the north side of Delancey Street here, and the remaining 6 sites are within the LSGD on the south side of Delancey Street. Subsequent to the approval, HPD and EDC issued an RFP to develop the project, and in September 2013, Delancey Street Associates was selected, and this is a collaboration between L&M Development Partners, BFC Partners, and Taconic Partners. Since that time, the sites have begun design development, but construction has yet to begin. Upon approval of this application, construction will begin on the first phase of the project, which includes sites 1, 2, 5, and 6, and again, sites 1 and 2 are subject to this application. So the surrounding neighborhood can be divided into 2 areas with distinct characteristics. First is the area that's characterized by Tower in the Park developments, and this is to the east of Essex Street on the south side of Delancey here, and to the east of Pitt Street on the north side of Delancey. And then the areas north and west of that are characterized by the mid-rise tenement developments. So the design controls of the Seward Park LSGD created massings that resulted in the best of these 2 building typologies. So we have strong street walls that are representative of the tenement developments with the light and air that's accompanied by the Tower in the Park developments. So the areas within, or the large scale and the 6 sites within it are bounded by Delancey Street to the north, Broome and Grant Street to the south, Clinton and Reade Street to the east, and Ludlow Street to the west. The sites are split between 2 zoning districts. There's a C61 district on sites 1 and 2, and then an R8 C25 district within the remaining sites. The sites range in size from approximately 20,000 square feet to 60,000 square feet, and they're all currently underutilized and contain parking and a mix of vacant and partially vacant structures. So moving on to sites 1 and 5. Site 1 again is located here. It's in these photos is that your right or left? There. And on this top photo. So site 1 is a regularly shaped zoning lot, and it's approximately 21,950 square feet. It's located on the southern portion of a block bounded by Delancey Street to the north, Broome Street to the south, Essex Street to the east, and Ludlow Street to the west. It's currently used as a surface level parking lot, and you can see that in this photo right here. Site 5, again, located here and in these photos, and on the bottom site plan, this contains 60,500 square feet and occupies the entire block bounded by Broome Street to the north, Grand Street to the south, Clinton Street to the east, and Suffolk Street to the west. The site currently contains 3 buildings, all of which are under HPD jurisdiction. And as part of the proposed project, these buildings will be demolished. There's also a 90-space public parking lot, which is operated under a month-to-month lease by HPD. Okay. So moving on to the proposed project. We'll start with Site 1, which is in this massing in this rendering here. So this will contain various retail and commercial tenants on floors 1 through 4, and approximately 55 market rate and affordable units on floors 5 through 14. The Andy Warhol Museum will be located on floors 1 through 3 on the north end of the building. And so what the base of the building is proposed to be tapered along Ludlow Street for a length of 92 feet from its intersection with Broome Street. And this will be for a depth of no greater than 6 feet. Because it's just 6 feet, it's hard to see here, but it's shown on this massing, on that slight tapering. So this setback will allow the Ludlow Street, this will serve to widen the Ludlow Street and Broome Street intersection and improve pedestrian circulation here. And because the design controls require that the base of each development uniformly meet the street line, a modification to those controls is required to allow for this tapering. So going on to Site 5, which is here and here, this will comprise of approximately 211 dwelling units, 50% of which will be permanently affordable. A 15,000 square foot open space will be located on the north end of the site, and to the west of the proposed building is a space for a future public school. A grocery store will initially be located on the first floor and cellar, and a retail home goods store will be located on the second floor. From the third floor up will be the residential units. So along Clinton Street, 65 feet beyond its intersection with Grand Street, and along the open space, the base of the building is proposed to be at a height of 29 feet. This will allow the building to be set back at a lower level at the third floor here, so the residential tower can begin at that floor. The design controls require that the minimum base height along Clinton Street and the open space to be 60 feet. So to allow for this reduction in the base height, a minor modification is required. So to facilitate the proposed development within the Seward Park large-scale general development, the applicant seeks approval of a minor modification to the previously approved special permit to update the building envelopes of Sites 1 and 5 of the LSGD. And this application was heard at Community Board 3's Land Use Committee last Tuesday, March 10th. The committee passed a resolution approving the project, and this resolution will be voted on by the full board of the Community Board on March 24th. So given this timeline, the project will be coming back to the Commission for consideration at the next review session on March 30th.
Thank you, Joel. Questions for Joel? Okay, so this is referred out to Community Board 3 for 45 days, but it sounds like it will come back sooner than that. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, Manny Lagares of our Bronx office will present the City Island Water Supply Drainage Easements application. This is to acquire easements to facilitate a new potable water main and storm sewage outfalls in City Island in the Bronx.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. As Jim mentioned, this is an application by the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection to provide water supply and drainage easements to the City Island section of Bronx Community District Number 10. City Island is a 3.5-mile long property, and it has City Island Avenue as its central spine. They also have housing, which is low scale to medium rise, small apartment buildings also. You also have detached and semi-detached homes. They also have yacht clubs, many restaurants, and some maritime uses. But City Islands has problems, and their main problem is drainage, and it's both tidal and street drainage issues that they have, and also the water supply, the potable water supply is on the current bridge, City Island Bridge, and also comes in from the mainland through Eastchester Bay. The bridge was built approximately 1937, and the main that's under the bay, 1911. So these are the issues that the Department of Environmental Protection and DCAS are hoping to fix with this project. In order to attain that, they have to have two easements, and these two easements are located. The first one that I will talk about is located on Kilrow Street, which is just south of the City Island Bridge, its connection to the mainland here. This easement is basically land on the water, and the dimensions are 35 by 326,000 feet approximately, which will be around 57,000 square feet. There are no businesses, it's just a vacant lot. There's businesses to the south. It's located in R3A zoning district, and you have homes across the street. Now, let me just get my notes here. The proposed, this proposed easement, which is on lot 5636 lot 100, is under private ownership, and it's adjacent to, as I mentioned, the residential homes. The easement is also adjacent to an asphalt accessory parking lot and waterfront for dockage, and the installation of the proposed water main is going to go on this easement. And it's a permanent use of the site for a below-grade water supply main that would extend from mainland to City Island Avenue. In addition, the proposed easement will allow the installation of a 24-inch sewer outfall from Kilrow Street that would be an at-grade structure along the in perpetuity use of the site for the proposed outfall structure and the permanent protection of a drainage way from the end of the outfall into Eastchester Bay. So your outfall is located at this point here. The easement, which also involves the sewer, is at this point here, and it takes a turn here where you'll have the water main. Okay, the other easement is on Miniford Avenue, which is located here, and this one is 300 by 35 here, and this one is located just north of the City Island Bridge, and it involves, it's right on a property that's privately owned, which is a one-story restaurant with offices on the second floor, and the part of the property that it's on is the gravel parking lot to this use here. This is in a C3 zone, which allows commercial uses. Okay, and it also has the asphalt accessory parking lot, which I mentioned, and the portion of this lot that would be affected by the proposed easement has temporary structures, including fences and metal storage containers. This easement would allow the temporary use of a part of this lot as a construction staging area to install the proposed storm sewer and the permanent use of the site for a below-grade water supply main that would extend from the mainland to City Island. The proposed easement would allow the installation of a 24-inch storm sewer outfall from Kilrow, I'm sorry, reading the wrong section here. The proposed easement on Miniford Avenue would allow the installation of a 48-inch by 24-inch below-grade storm sewer outfall across the upland of the site. Proposed Miniford Avenue requires the sewer easement for the installation of a below-grade storm sewer across the parking lot of an existing waterfront business. And the outfall on this one will be by the water here, and the easement will run. And again, this will be in perpetuity. Nothing can be built on top of these structures. They must remain free and clear. The applicant has informed us that they have notified the owners of both of these properties of this project, so they are aware of this project. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Manny. Questions for Manny? Ms. Delauss?
Hi, Manny.
Hi.
Just a question about easements that go into the water and how that impacts any future use in that particular area of the water in terms of dock structures or marinas and things like that.
Well, it's not mentioned in the application, but I will get back to you on that.
Okay, and then just on the storm sewer outfall. Maybe just help us or help me understand something about that. So in the event of a large rainfall, is it that the rainfall and sewer combine and then gallons of water and sewage go into the water? Is that how it works in this case?
No,
Okay,
no, it's just a stormwater.
just the stormwater.
Right.
Okay, that's good to hear, especially for not only the environment, but for the restaurant goers that are close by.
Right.
Thanks.
Yes, okay.
Any other questions for Manny? This is all necessitated by the reconstruction of the City Island Bridge, which you will all recall was a triumphant design success of Commissioner Trottenberg. And I think this will provide a more stable and better water supply ultimately to City Island. So that certified?
Okay.
Thank you, Manny.
Okay, you all.
Thank you. Going to page 59 of your agenda, our next item is the Amico Senior Citizen Center, which is an acquisition to facilitate the continued use of a senior citizen center in Borough Park in Brooklyn. Presenting is Jonah Rogoff of our Brooklyn office.
I mean, it was disgusting, but it really shows you the problem. Infrastructure improvements.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. This application is coming back to the Commission for a pre-hearing after being certified in December 2014. The New York City Department for the Aging, DFTA, and the Department for Citywide Administrative Services, DCAS, are requesting an acquisition of property located at 5901 13th Avenue in Borough Park, Brooklyn, Community District 12, to continue the use of approximately 18,750 square feet of floor area as a senior citizen center, which has operated since 1973. The current lease expired, and the applicants are requesting approval to renew the lease to continue occupying the second and third story of the building. As a brief refresher, the site is located in an R5 zoning district. To the north of the site is predominantly residential with attached and semi-detached homes, as well as 3 to 4 story multifamily apartment buildings. To the south of the site is an M1-1 district, which consists of a mix of light manufacturing and commercial uses. New Utrecht Avenue and 13th Avenue here serve as the local commercial corridors with a variety of local retail. The senior center is served well by public transit, located only a few blocks from the D&N subway lines, which are shown on the map, as well as the B9 and B16 bus routes. The center is located in a 3-story privately owned building with a total of approximately 30,000 square feet of floor area. The senior center occupies, this is a reminder, only the second and third floor of the building, while a privately operated school occupies the first floor. As shown in the interior pictures on the left, the center contains a range of uses, including facilities including kitchen, dining area, dance floor, several multi-purpose rooms, and rooms for exercising, playing cards, bingo, billiards, and the list goes on. An average of 265 seniors use the center every day, while over 7,000 are listed as members. The center is open 5 days a week, serves over 66,000 meals per year, and offers an array of health-related programs. Additionally, staff and social workers assist members with social service needs, such as applying for entitlement programs and other public benefits. There are also intergenerational programs that work with volunteers from public schools and graduate school interns from the NYU School of Social Work. And then during the summer, many students work or volunteer through the New York Youth Works program, which is a state-based workforce development program. During a site visit in October and a recent follow-up visit, the center was observed to be highly active and well-utilized, while the building's exterior and interior appeared to be in overall good condition. Several repairs and renovations have been completed since 1993, when the commission previously approved the continued use of the center. At the December review session, concerns were raised about an adjacent lumberyard and the use of forklifts on the sidewalk. In a conversation with DOT, it was suggested that the use of forklifts may in fact be illegal and would require stronger enforcement to prevent such future incidents. DOT also offered to send investigators to the site and happily meet with staff from the senior center to explore short and long-term methods of addressing the issue. And as a ULURP update, on February 25th, Community Board 12 voted unanimously, 33 in favor with no abstentions, to approve the application. And then on March 11th, the Borough President, Eric Adams, recommended to approve the action with the conditions that the lease be renewed for a minimum of 20 years, and that trees be planted along 59th Street, which can be seen in the middle shot on the right. And then in addition, the Borough President recommended that separately from the CPC's action, that DEP study incorporating bioswales along the street, and also work with DOT to extend the curb to improve pedestrian safety. Finally, DCAS shared a copy of the draft scope of work for today, which details the work to be completed by the landlord, including standards to be met to be in conformance with all governing codes, including the zoning code, buildings code, and other issues such as ADA compliance. For the commission's reference, this document has been attached to the briefing material, and that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonah. Questions for Jonah? Irwin, Mr. Cantor, I'm sorry. He said Irwin. Yeah, it's
How many elevators are there?
There's one elevator in the building.
What happens when the elevator goes down?
When the elevator goes is not working, the director of the center mentioned that they follow like an emergency procedure where they may have to take members of the center, guide them along the stairwell, which is adjacent to the elevator. And I'm sure like DIFTA, representative from DIFTA will be here on Wednesday, and also the director of the center, so they can explain that in further detail.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dweck.
Thank you. There were some concerns about the term of the lease by the borough president. Can you address that and what the proposed term is?
So the DCAS is proposing a 20-year term, and the borough president wanted to ensure that remain intact at a minimum. And the purpose is to ensure that the center, that the landlord doesn't find a new tenant that can pay a lot more, and it's an effort to maximize the services.
Do you know if the landlord has been amenable to the 20-year term? Because I see the approval that we requested is up to a 20-year term. Do you know if that's been confirmed?
From what I understand, yes. I know that DCAS has been working closely with the landlord, and I'm sure that they can provide more information about the negotiation. They can.
Thank
Mr. Knuckles.
So, Jonah, I forgot, was it at certification or today will you tell us you've been to the premises and that they are in
I visited, I did a site visit last week, and then prior to certification, to see if there's any additional renovations, and also to like follow up on certain issues such as like lumberyard and other concerns that were raised here. Commission.
Okay. And your findings were?
Well, my findings were that the use, it's a very active center. It's.
I mean, condition-wise.
The conditions are good. I think, as you see in the draft scope of work, there are a few repairs that need to be made, but they don't affect the daily operations of the center. And as far as like the utilization of the center, it's crowded. There were seniors eating lunch. There was dancing. Same, last week, just as there was a few months ago.
Would you feel comfortable if a relative of yours was there? That's what I'm trying to get to.
I would, but I don't want to spread that information too much because I don't want to, because I think it's a very, I feel like it's so well utilized that,
Not one more person can
capacity
get
might
in
be an
there.
issue later on. But yeah,
There's an exercise.
I would recommend, I would recommend, but as far as the specific, issues that, the conditions were observed to be good. I'm sure DCAS can provide more information about specific repairs and that.
Great.
Right.
Thank you, Joan. I hope that wasn't too painful for you.
First Ms. Levin, then Ms. Ortiz.
I make this one a little easier. We won't get into personal relatives. I think it's at certification, we were told that the landlord was working on water leaks. And I see that some minor repairs are hinted at in the scope of work, but are leaks a big deal there? And I hope I hope it's really going to be grappled with in the course of lease renewal.
Yeah, so that was observed during the site, the first site visit, and there's a leak in the not in the primary stairway, but in the secondary one that's not used. It's not used often by the members of the center. I think from what I observed and what I was told by the director of the center, it's an issue, but it doesn't affect. It's not a major concern that really interferes with the center. And I think DCAS and specifically the director of the center can provide a lot more information on that.
Okay, good. And then one more question, if I may, I'm glad that you started the conversation with DOT about enforcement, but how is that information going to get to the manager of the facility so that plans can really be set in place to deal with the enforcement? I have a feeling that we're talking at very high levels of city agencies, and sometimes the legwork that has to happen locally kind of doesn't get committed to. Are we going to get this straightened out? We shouldn't have forklifts running over seniors.
So as far as I think there's short-term issues of enforcement, and DOT has expressed to me that they're willing to go out to the site immediately. But then there's also more long-term steps, and in the scope of work, it was included that DOT look at bollards or other ways of preventing forklifts from using that portion of the sidewalk.
Good. So has that information gotten to the manager of the center? So they know that what they can do when they got a forklift on the sidewalk, who can they call for enforcement?
The manager, so the landlord's been working with this. It's been an ongoing issue, so I'm sure that the landlord is aware of the situation. And I think that I'd like to defer to DCAS because I know the scope of work is in a draft phase, so I'm not sure if they've necessarily shared that yet with
Okay.
the landlord.
Well, and if the manager is coming on Wednesday, I'm sure we can hear directly about it.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ortiz?
Hi, good morning, Jonah. So I noted that, the borough president's recommendations that there was a request for tree planting for purposes of tree beautification, or for beautification, an extension of the curbs, as you mentioned, for pedestrian safety. And so there's a concern about the physical environment here. And, one thing I seem to have noticed increasingly is with many of these projects is the way the ground floor there's no engagement between what's happening inside this building, which is a lot of vibrant activity, and what's happening on the sidewalk. It's very difficult to tell, that this is even a senior center, and there's no transparency. The door, in most cases, there's a transparent door so you can see. Have any of those issues come up at all, or, is that something you think that the community would have an interest in, given that it, could potentially address some of their concerns around beautification as well?
I think that's definitely a question I think the director of the center too. I think that they, as far as like having outreach to surrounding area, and having a center with like proper like signage. And it seems like there weren't any issues attracting people to the center. And it's also, just as a reminder, the center is located only on the second and third floor. But I'm not aware of any discussions between like the private landlord and the director about.
Thank you.
I have do you have a question? I do. Okay. Ms. Jung?
So I was noticing in the work scope here, there's a mention of sub-metering, both for gas and water, and then also something about disconnecting the basement tenants' electricals from the DIFTA's electric meter. So I'm just wondering, has the city been paying the electric bills for the first, and I guess is it first floor and basement tenant for all this time?
Well, the basement and first floor was occupied by a city-managed childcare center. That lease was terminated in 2012. So I can't speak to the specific issues with that, because the scope of work doesn't necessarily cover those operations. But I think that DCAS can give you specific information.
And then I guess the other question, and I was thinking about this because the meter's coming up, but I'm wondering whether maybe, I don't know if it's DIFTA or if it's DCAS, but I'm wondering if when these lease renewals come up, if there's any sense of whether the utility, water, sewer, and gas use, how these centers compare in any way. Because the scope of work, it has an opportunity to influence what the bills that the city ends up paying over the course of 20 years ends up looking like. And so it seems like, if there's, for example, a history of higher than average use, then maybe you negotiate more aggressively for, instead of relamping, maybe you actually ask them to replace the fixtures so that, you can get higher performing fixtures, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a question mark at the end.
No, I understand. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think that DCAS can give more details on that issue. I'm not aware of like benchmarking or monitoring energy usage as part of the lease negotiation process, but I can check with them and follow up with you.
Mr. Marin?
Under the summary scope of work, it also talks about renewing public assembly permits and letters of no objection for the second and third floor. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure, I can provide some basic information on that. The public assembly permit applies to it needs to be renewed for having over 75 or more people in the space. So the director of the center has been cautious about about the capacity for each of the rooms. So far, it hasn't been expressed as as an urgent issue. But I think that that's a question to follow up with at the public hearing.
Is there a situation where there's more than 75 people in the room at a time? Is that what this is about?
The public, that was the main concern. But I think that I'll check in with them on that issue. But I think that the director of the center will be testifying on Wednesday, and I think that she can give a full picture of the purpose of that.
Well, I mean, you just, as a matter of law, you just do need a public assembly permit if you have more than 75 people. And so presumably this is more an issue of whose responsibility it is to get it, whether it's the landlords or the tenants, as opposed to whether it should be gotten, because clearly it must be obtained. I just have a few questions, Jonah. When you notified DOT, has DOT visited and the premises between December and now, as far as you know, to check on the operation of the forklifts in the lumberyard next door?
I'm not aware of them inspecting the center. They offered to inspect it, but I didn't want to preemptively to do that without the application moving forward. So they did offer that. I'm not sure if they're studying. As far as enforcement, they haven't sent an inspector, but the NYPD has issued tickets to the owners of the lumberyard space before. So I can check with DOT on that.
That would be helpful. Mr. Dwyer?
Just to pick up on your comments, I'm not sure if the enforcement of the forklifts would be a DOB issue or DOT issue?
DOT.
Why would DOT?
Because of
External?
the external
Would that be a
operation.
police issue more than a DOT?
Well, it could be DOT or police.
From what I understand, NYPD as the officers have the authority to issue violations. But I think my understanding is that it concerns the rules regarding loading and unloading, which falls under the DOT's role of inspection.
Can they issue a summons? Does DOT have the power to issue a summons?
Yeah. I would, this is more an observation than a question, Jonah, but we don't know, and I guess this is a question to DCAS on all of these applications, the stage of negotiations or what stage of negotiations they are at with the landlord, whether at the moment this is just the scope of work that we have is just a proposal to the landlord, or the landlord has embraced this, or the landlord is just, this lease is just awaiting our approval and the city council's approval prior to execution, or what? We don't know that at this point, do we?
And I had a conversation with the lease manager with DCAS last week, and he indicated that it's expected that this will become the final. So they've already passed a period where they incorporate comments from the user of the center and the landlord. But I think that I'd rather have DCAS will be able to answer that more definitively, and also explain the full process of drafting a scope of work and some of the specific parts of the lease negotiation process.
Well, I think I'm more, negotiation between landlord and tenant is a negotiation, and that has, in each instance, has its own dynamic, but we should have, when these are before us, a fairly good idea, not from you necessarily, but from DCAS, of what stage of negotiations they're in with the owner, because on the one hand, there are certain things we want to be sure do get incorporated in the final agreement. On the other hand, we don't want to so constrain DCAS that if we conditioned our approval, they'd have to come back if for some reason a particular provision wasn't, they were not able to succeed in their negotiations to get a particular provision included. So it really, to me, is a question of at what stage of maturity are these negotiations by the time these issues come before us?
And just
More a statement than a question to you.
I understand, and just for your knowledge, I did ask DCAS when did they begin drafting the scope of work, and this it's a process that can take months or longer than a year, and I think DCAS will be able to speak to that on Wednesday's public hearing, but they said that the draft scope of work could be even independent work of this application or occur prior to it. Would be ready before certification. So I think those are definitely questions to ask DCAS on Wednesday.
Okay. Any other questions to Jonah? And I guess just one final question. If trees were to be planted, as suggested by the borough president, that presumably would be the responsibility of the Parks Department as opposed to the owner here. Is that correct?
I think there was a mention in the BP's letter that they wanted some sort of agreement with the owner for maintenance
For maintenance, but
of the trees.
with
Yeah.
the trees planted by the city, but
Oh, yes,
maintained
yeah.
by the owner. Okay.
It would be on as part of the lease agreement, but it would have to be coordinated by the Parks Department.
Sure.
And in the recommendation, there was also an issue of whether trees are feasible because it's close to a traffic light.
Right.
And so that was investigated a few years ago, but I'm not sure if that status of that has changed.
And someone mentioned DOT would probably have to approve it. Okay. Thank you, Jonah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next item is a similar type of facility. This is the Early Life Center 11 and A. Philip Randolph Senior Center. Calvin Brown from our Manhattan office will make the presentation. And this is to acquire, these are an acquisition to facilitate the continued use of a daycare center and a senior citizen center.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioner. This application is returning for pre-hearing. It's for acquisition, lease renewal, for a site located at 108-110 West 146th Street for the continued use for the Child Care Center and the Senior Center located at this property in Manhattan Community District 10. The subject site is located on the south side of West 146th Street between Lenox Avenue and Adam Clayton Powell and is located within a C83 zoning district. The typical built environment is residential with ground floor retail. The major retail corridor in this area is West 146th Street, and the site is located across the street from the Mother Clara Hill MTA bus depot. At the time of this application was certified, the subject site is approximately 40,000 square feet, is occupied with the senior center on the first floor and the daycare center on the second floor. The senior center has approximately 14,000 square feet floor area. This application was certified in December of 2014. At that time, I did perform a site visit. In terms of what my untrained eyes can see, it seemed like it was in pretty good condition. There were no visible leaks or any structural issues that would pose any sort of danger for the seniors or the children. It was referred out to the community board. However, they did not provide a recommendation, but I did speak with the district manager who attended a site visit of the site with the borough president's office, and he stated that the board really didn't have any issues with this particular application. The borough president provided a recommendation, a favorable recommendation on March 10th, but highlighted some issues in terms of these sort of facilities moving forward, in terms of site locations, and just really understanding where these facilities are located and the issues that may be facing them in terms of securing leases, given the sort of changes that are occurring in some of the neighborhoods that these facilities are located in. I provided a draft scope of work that I received from DCAS Friday evenings. I didn't have a chance to get it into your packages for over the weekend. And basically, just to kind of summarize, it's, building code issues that they want them to comply with, but no structural items are listed on that scope of work. And if there are any other questions.
Questions? Ms. Zhang?
So there are a few things that I'm curious about based on sort of this bullet point thing.
Yes.
First of all, I've forgotten how long is this lease going to be renewed for?
This is a short-term lease, and the term of the lease will expire 12/31/2018.
Okay. And then just, this may just be a function of the fact that this is such a summary list, but there's some things on here that just, I think the mayor is just, digging into just a little bit more. I think that, given that this is a short-term renewal, maybe it's not as much of an issue. It's not like we're not going to see this again for 20 years, but there's a mention of exhaust fans that aren't working, for example, that they require, it's calling for them to be repaired or replaced. There's, I'm curious about sort of what the technical requirements are on that, because you're saying that it needs to meet code doesn't, that's obviously good. But, our code doesn't, it provides a minimum CFM, but not a max, so you could have like an oversized fan up there that's got belts that break all the time, and so creates sort of an operation and maintenance problem. And so, I would be curious to know, like, if they're going to replace them, then are we provide, is DCAS providing some guidelines as to sort of better equipment to replace it with, so that you don't end up with sort of newer version of the same clunker that was breaking on them to begin with. So not knowing sort of the history of, whether that was a recurring problem or not, I wouldn't know, but just sort of like raises some questions on that front.
Okay, well, DCAS is in the audience, and I'm quite sure they'll be able to speak to that. It is a short-term lease, so I guess they'll provide more information in terms of how those negotiation goes as opposed to a longer-term lease. And once again, I'd like to mention that this is just a draft too, so any considerations that are raised, they definitely can take that back to the landlord when they're negotiating the final scope of work.
If I might have just a follow-up question, it seems like it seems like this building had a number of code issues, able to sort of successfully address all of these things, over the course, or whether before the lease is signed, or whether it's going to be sort of allowed to sort of, continue to be progressed for over 3 years, and whether it's meant to have any impact on whether there's a subsequent lease renewal or not.
Yeah, I didn't have an opportunity to, have another conversation with DCAS because at the time that I got this, I was just reading it as well. But like I said, they're in the audience, so they're well aware of the concerns that you just raised, and they will have to address those on Wednesday.
Ms. Levin?
What I have is not really so much a question for you, Calvin, but maybe a question for all of us, and it really picks up on the chair's question/comment with respect to the previous application, but this one is even more troubling, because it appears here that this is basically a development site, that the site has been sold, and the new owner understandably isn't willing to commit to long-term maintenance of this really critical municipal facility. And I think we have some other ones in the pipeline that are in a similar predicament. I think the reality is this landlord, it's not even clear here if the landlord, I guess we understand they're not interested in 20 years, maybe they're interested in 3 years, but it doesn't even sound to me like they've committed to that. So why does it come to us at what point is it appropriate for these applications to come to us for approval? And then what kind of long-term planning is the city or the agency doing for resiting? Many of these facilities have been there for 40 years. They're in obsolete space. They're critically important to the population of our city, and and the land is changing underneath them, and we need a place for them to go.
Those are all very, very good questions. Let me address them a little bit to the extent I can. First of all, there's no question that this is, at best, a landlord who is willing to extend this occupancy for a very short period of time, and clearly this just gives the city an opportunity to find an alternative space, that this space will not be available for more than 3 years at maximum. And that does constrain, obviously, the investment and repairs that will go into this over the next few years. It raises, I think, two different issues. One, I do know that there are serious limitations on DCAS's ability to extend leases via license agreements as opposed to leases, so that even for short renewals, that there's a need, or short extensions, a need to go through the EULA process. That's, in my view, that should be much more flexible, because license opportunities should be more available just generally to DCAS, at least for some period of time. But second, and a much broader issue, is especially at a time when, as the borough president points out, at a time when there is a great deal of development going on in the city, that development is taking place in neighborhoods throughout the city, that we can no longer, it's not, even if these leases are renewable for 20 years, most of these are in facilities that go back 40 years or longer. We have opportunities now in new developments to identify space on a paying basis that can be used for daycare and senior citizen centers and other community facilities. And I've talked to city planning staff about, as we identify developments here, and as HPD and other EDC and other city agencies identify developments that are in process, that we should be working closely with DCAS and Department for the Aging and ACS and others to make them aware of these opportunities and to start migrating these leases from what frequently are problematic spaces to newer, more modern spaces that are going to be good for all concerned. This is good community development. These are the kinds of uses that neighborhoods need and rely on, and frankly, they can frequently aid the economics of particular developments as well. So we here are committed to doing that, and we'll work with DCAS, DIFTA, ACS, and others to make opportunities available. But it really means a different way of looking at this whole portfolio and thinking about it as not just, by rote renewing these leases, but by taking the opportunity to engage in true community development.
Yeah, no, that's really reassuring to hear, and I think it's something we've all only become aware of in the last, say, 6 months as we've faced this raft of these things. And, historically, we've not coordinated with those other agencies on this particular matter, and I'm glad you've identified the issue and are working on it.
We're starting, and I think in fairness, the cycles by which these leases came up, they've come up in 2 different 20-year cycles. In the first cycle, there was on a crash basis, the city, as the daycare program in the city particularly expanded in a hurry. There was a really need to identify spaces as quickly as possible. And then 25 years ago, the city was in the midst of a recession, and it was we didn't see opportunities for new development. Now we do, and now we're in a, let's hope it continues, a rather virtuous cycle. And so this is a really opportune moment to do this. Mr. Cantor and then Ms. Deluz.
Mr. Chairman, in the circumstance such as this, where DCAS has a limited amount of time to make a decision for 3 years hence, have they started any discussions with our agency?
I don't know. We can ask DCAS tomorrow about that. I don't know that they have, and maybe Calvin,
Well,
whether
for
they
this
have.
particular site, they are going to start looking in terms of what the universe is of other locations where they can probably house this facility. So they are taking that into consideration, and just knowing what that universe is for other sites that may be facing a similar situation where they may have a hard time renegotiating leases because the area is changing. So they are well aware of that.
But I do think, and this is as frankly as much our obligation as it is DCAS's and the service agencies as well, to see what we can do and what HPD can do and what EDC can do and what others who are involved in the development process can do to identify early on opportunities that that DCAS can take advantage of, and because, as I said, I think that's not only desirable for new developments, but actually could aid the economics of developments as well. And as we enter into leases in newer space, not only provide a better environment for children and seniors, but also, frankly, reduce the costs of maintenance and repairs. It's going to be always a problem in buildings that are 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 years old. Ms. Deluz, I'm sorry, Mr. Cantor.
As a follow-up,
Oh, sorry.
do we know how many short leases are coming before us? Do we have any idea?
I don't know how many short, I think this is the first short lease we've seen in a while, but we are working, beginning to work with DCAS and ACS and DIFTA in a much more intensive way before these applications come before the commission, because as you know, we've been stressing that applications should, we should certify applications when they're complete but this is an element of completion. So we're looking at all of these very, very carefully, but I think we all have an obligation, all the city agencies, including ourselves, have an obligation to try to find alternatives.
I would note from my experiences that someone wanting some space 3 years from now is probably either on the threshold of looking or has been looking for quite a while in general. And when I put that against what Jonah had presented on the last application, where he was saying that it could take up to a year for them to write a scope, it's kind of frightening.
I think you can ask, they'll obviously be testifying on Wednesday, you can ask DCAS how long the process of renewals take. And just again, going back to the last application that Jonah presented, one question in terms of the maturity of the negotiations by the time they reach us really depends to a great extent, as Vice Chairman Knuckles has indicated, who knows this process probably the best among us, really depends on negotiations being opened up and commenced as with a substantial amount of lead time, well in advance of before we see it.
Thank you.
Ms. Delos.
Just as a brief follow-up, and I'm glad to hear that trying to encourage co-location of affordable housing and senior and/or childcare centers is something that we all think is a good idea. I think one of the things that would help in that process, and this is primarily geared to ACS and DFTA, I guess, along with DCAS, is, if there's some 21st century floor plan for these centers that could be put out there to the development community, that would be helpful. Obviously in the other hat that I wear on a day-to-day basis, those are the kinds of things that would be helpful for us, the development community, to know. And so that kind of thinking can be incorporated into design plans as that's happening now. And the other, and I don't know what the experience is of the owners of the properties in terms of timeliness of payment for rent, but that would, if that is an issue, especially as it relates to co-location with affordable housing, that would be one of the things that would have to be rectified. Because it's, ultimately, if one city agency is slow in paying the owner, then HPD or HDC is going to be, they're not going to be so happy about lateness of mortgage payments. So that's just one of the things to think about.
Indeed. But I think we can ask presumably some of these questions to particularly to DCAS when they're here on Wednesday. But I think a lot of this goes obviously way beyond just DCAS or the service agencies. It really does rely on the development agencies as well, providing opportunities, and it really does create a moment for the city to work in a coordinated way. So this will have a public hearing on Wednesday.
Yes.
It will.
Thank you, Calvin.
Okay, moving on to item number 5 in your agenda, page 123. Richard Suarez of the Manhattan office is here to present a special permit for a parking garage at 551 West 21st Street, and it will facilitate 53 public parking spaces.
All right.
They should know.
Good afternoon. This is a private application for a special permit pursuant to sections 1345 and 13451 for 53 public parking spaces within a 44-unit mixed-use building at 551 West 21st Street. This application is returning for a public hearing following review by Manhattan Community Board 4 and the Manhattan Borough President. 551 West 21st Street is located in the Chelsea neighborhood of Community District 4. It's an L-shaped lot here, bounded by West 21st Street to the south, 11th Avenue to the west, and West 22nd Street to the north. It's located just across the street from Chelsea Piers and just under a block away from the High Line. The applicant proposes to develop a new 19-story mixed-use building with 44 market-rate residential units, a commercial art gallery, and a 53-space attended public parking garage in the cellar. The project zoning lot consists of 3 tax lots. Can't really see here, but 1, 8, and 64. But the mixed-use developments and the public parking garage will only be located on lots 1 and 8, using unused development rights from lot 64. Lot 64 is currently occupied by a 3-story building that was previously used by the Chelsea Art Museum, but is now used by Hewlett-Packard's office as office space. An as-of-right building with 44 units, a commercial art gallery, and 9 parking spaces is currently under construction. In order to provide 53 public parking spaces, a special permit pursuant to sections 1345 and 13451A is requested. New public parking garages of any size are not permitted as of right within the Manhattan core, but are permitted via any of the special permits listed in sections 13451 through 13455. The applicant proposes to locate the 53 parking spaces on the ground floor and cellar levels of the building. All spaces except for the ADA space will be in the cellar and within the cellar level, and 20 of the parking spaces will be elevated and located in parking lifts. All access will take place on West 21st Street. This is the look of the West 21st Street facade. The entrance to the garage would be located right here. During the day, the doors will be open, and then at night they'll be closed. And then this is the look at the ground floor plan, West 21st Street going east, and then the curb cut. 5 reservoir spaces would be provided in this motor court, at which point the attendant would pick up the car here, and then elevators going down and up level where there are 20 lifts, and 52 of the spaces would be here, the 53rd, the ADA space up here. On February 4th, Community Board 4 voted to issue a resolution by a vote of 18 in favor, 15 opposed, and 0 abstentions to recommend approval of the application on the condition that all signage for the garage be located within the motor court or garage area and not on any street frontage. CB4 notes that they are a strong advocate for public transportation, but that reasonable accommodations for parking must be made, especially in areas that are not well served by public transportation, such as this site. We have not yet received a recommendation from the borough president, but she is expected to submit her recommendation today. Her staff has indicated that a letter recommending approval with conditions will be issued, and that will support the community board's recommendation. Just quickly, in response to the community board condition regarding signage, the applicant has noted that no signage will be located on any street frontage, but that it would be, if any, on within the motor court area as requested, likely on this structural member here with the building's address. That's it, thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Questions? Mr. Knuckles.
So, Richard, I guess you made reference to it, but the 15 votes against, that was essentially people who don't want any more provisions for automobiles or?
As far as I understand,
Yeah.
what was explained to me is that there are some folks in the community board that understand that accommodations do need to be made for a space like this that is very far away from the subway. I think there are others in the community board that are generally against additional parking in the area, and I think that's reflected in this vote.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Richard? Okay, see you back on Wednesday.
Thanks.
The next item is the Staten Island Mall enlargement. These involves a number of authorizations to allow reduction in the required parking, modification of parking layout and maneuverability requirements, and modification to landscaping requirements to facilitate an enlargement of the Staten Island Mall. Barry Fisher of the Staten Island office will now make a presentation.
This has been a long time getting here, but
This applicant,
journey is about to formally begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman. This applicant, General Growth Properties, requests CPC authorizations for parking layout arrangement, parking reduction, and modification of maneuverability and landscaping requirements within a C41 commercial district to facilitate a proposed 418,000 square feet of additional entertainment, and retail space on an 85-acre site. In this application, roughly 1,500 or 1,800 existing parking spaces would be replaced with the enlargement in the form of new additions, new retail or restaurant pads, a parking garage, additional landscaping, and pedestrian connections to surrounding uses. The Staten Island Mall site has been a fixture in Staten Island for over 40 years. It's like a de facto town center. It's the only enclosed shopping mall. It started in 1971 with BSA approvals for a Macy's and Sears anchor store with a mall in the middle. In 1991, the City Planning Commission approved an additional enlargement with a JCPenney's, third anchor store, additional mall stores. And in 2002, the CPC and BSA approvals allowed for a standalone Macy's furniture store. This is largely surrounded by parking. The applicant is wishing to transform some of this into an entertainment center. The mall is already located in a popular retail corridor. You have prior CPC approvals for Costco 2010, Target 2011, located south of the site, other large retail located north of the site. Very active shopping corridor is this Richmond Avenue. There's housing to the north and east of the site, a public school, PS 58. The most celebrated land use is Fresh Kills, which had long been an active landfill, and that, so shoppers have endured that. Now it's being transformed, of course. It's already become a meadow. It's subject of CPC applications to be a park, along with street, relations of street and new street mappings, which may create a street down here. But in any event, there is a 14-foot heavily landscaped buffer, which originally shielded the mall from the landfill. Now that it's no longer a landfill and now a meadow, it almost helps blend the nature together. If you stand in a lot of places in Fresh Hills, the woods on this berm actually blend in with the woods in Montserrat Park to the east, which ends up looking like hiding a lot of this development. In my experience.
I was very excited about that.
Thoroughfares in the neighborhood are the Richmond Avenue. It's at least 3 lanes in each direction. It connects the Veterans War Memorial Parkway to the south with Staten Island Expressway to the north. In addition, you have Rockland Avenue and Forest Hill Road, which take people from northeast Staten Island. There's Richmond Hill Road, people get from more of the eastern part of Staten Island, say New Dorp, and Travis Avenue, which eventually connects with the West Shore Expressway. The existing mall functions as one single zoning lot. It is technically divided into 3 zoning lots. It's always been 3 zoning lots ever since it was built with separate ownership. Macy's owns their own zoning lot, as well as Sears. J.C. Penney and the mall operator own the central zoning lot. Each zoning lot consists of floor space plus nearby parking spaces. So, for example, Macy's has a 50,000 square foot furniture store, say 2,020 square foot anchor, and 1,280 parking spaces in their zoning lot. And similar, the other zoning lots have proportionate amount of parking. However, you would never know it by going there. They all function as one single shopping mall. Existing vehicular circulation is accessed by 4 surrounding streets. Richmond Avenue, again, is the widest. It's 4 lanes in each direction here, plus extra turn lanes in the median. Platinum Avenue and Marsh Avenue are 2 other streets that are fronting the site, as well as Richmond Hill Road. There are a total of 9 access points fronting the site. 7 of them already have a traffic signal. The largest access point is this center one on Richmond Avenue. It has 4 driveways, which allows cars to turn left in and out of the site simultaneously. All of the access points lead to Ring Road, which cars can use to drive around until they kind of see their stores, see see an available shopping, an available parking space, and pull in. So this Ring Road, which surrounds the building along with Platinum Avenue, which is City Street, kind of allow for circular driving. Existing parking utilization, it's 50% under or 50% utilized normally. During the peak holiday shopping hour, which is the most intense time, there are 2,100 free parking spaces still on the site. That's existing conditions. That's out of 5,900 free space. There's 5,900 parking spaces. There are bus stops on the site for 8 local bus routes, which go all over the island, and several of them terminate at this site. There is room for improvement in terms of pedestrian linkages, which the applicant is taking the opportunity in their proposal. The first part of the applicant's proposal is to merge 2 of the 3 zoning lots that are on the site to create the proposed development site. And so all of the CPC actions are specifically for this green area. Sears, again, they're in an existing separate zoning lot, and they've chosen not to participate in the project and will not be enlarged. The proposed site plan would take, again, 1,800 parking spaces, replace them with this 1,413 parking space garage, which would result in a net loss of 367 parking spaces. They propose a total enlargement to almost 1.4 million square feet of floor area with 5,477 parking spaces. They are requesting a parking reduction of 47.5% from the minimum required, and this, according to the applicant's forecast, would result in still, even after a net loss of some spaces and increased floor area, it would still result in 540 parking spaces that are empty during the peak, most intense holiday shopping weekend hour, and more typically on a busy weekend, it would still result in 1,458 parking spaces that are not occupied. The enlargements consist of a food store, 50,000 square feet, cinema and retail at the front along Richmond Avenue, additional restaurant plazas, and a 100,000 square foot multi-use plaza. The parking garage, as I stated, is proposed there. Macy's would have an enlargement. Macy's department store would have an enlargement. Focusing on the southwest portion of the site, which is the most exciting design improvement, is again the 100,000 square foot shopping, 100,000 square foot multi-use plaza, which right now there's a farmer's market that takes place in this parking lot here. It would be relocated to the plaza to act as more appropriate town center kind of environment. These proposed restaurant or retail pads would feasibly have outdoor seating, outdoor cafes. Additional 10-foot walkway would connect the new Springville Greenway, which is a brand new bike and running path fronting Fresh Hills Park, to the front door of the mall and create this new entertainment center with a more vibrant outdoor life than the mall currently has. The applicant also proposed additional pedestrian connections throughout other uses surrounding the site. The applicants proposed additional landscaping as well in order to help meet parking requirements. The parking garage would have a pedestrian overpass between the parking garage and the mall, as well as 1 or 2 raised crosswalks again, that's just to orient you, this is where the parking garage would be located, and these would be the additions, and that up there is the existing building. In order to meet the findings for the CPC authorization, the applicant needs to demonstrate that the layout of the parking space is arranged in location and located in relation to the uses on the site so as to provide adequate ingress, egress, and circulation with respect to the abutting streets. According to the applicant, the existing circulation will be maintained, so this ring road would not be moved at all. Instead, the development would be brought up, right up to Ring Road here. And likewise, the access points would remain. The applicant is also willing to put in a traffic signal on one of the access points that doesn't have a traffic signal currently. The applicant also proposes, regarding circulation, 5 new pedestrian links to the surrounding land uses. And this would also include improved pedestrian links to the existing bus stops, which would continue. Another authorization that the applicant is requesting is for modification of landscaping requirements. They do meet maneuverability requirements. They currently are proposing these 2 long, continuous landscaped islands in order to help meet one of the requirements. However, throughout most of the zoning lot, they are requesting a waiver from those long linear islands. The applicant is requesting these smaller islands at ends of parking rows and intermediate parking rows throughout most of the zoning lot nearby where enlargements are proposed. And are requesting a waiver from providing such smaller landscape islands towards the south end of the lot, primarily where there's no development. The applicant is also requesting a modification of perimeter tree requirements, although they are providing 87. And lastly, they are requesting an authorization for waiver of bioswales throughout the entire site because the existing parking does not slope into the landscape islands. Now, the applicant points out that they exceed strict zoning requirements in total. There is an 84-foot deep landscape buffer currently, which acts as a buffer between the building and the existing multi-family residential. And there are also other open areas which will be left as is. So in total, they're proposing 12.8 acres of landscaping, which is nearly 2 more acres than what would strictly be required by zoning. They are proposing 927 total trees, which is 276 more trees than they would be required to provide. So in spirit, the applicant is exceeding the landscaping requirements. They have disclosed that while the proposed additions are under a tight schedule, that Macy's may choose to wait until a later date to build their enlargement. So if, suppose, General Growth Properties builds their portion of the enlargements first, they have an interim site plan which has a smaller parking garage and, again, new landscaping in existing parking area. The draft environmental impact statement identified that the proposed actions would result in a potential significant adverse impacts with respect to vehicle traffic only, not to transit or pedestrian, just vehicle traffic. And so the applicant is proposing mitigation measures that would fully or partially mitigate these impacts on up to 33 out of 38 intersections studied by their consultant, and 5 of those would have unmitigated impacts. Now, this does have a public hearing that's not scheduled yet, but it will likely be in May here on the DEIS, in which questions can be asked of the applicants and consultants. In summary, this proposed addition and enlargement of the Staten Island Mall would recreate a town center that it would be a great update for what now looks like a 70s style mall, and it would bring it into the current century in terms of allowing more uses. Again, it's mixing a cinema space in with retail and outdoor seating potentially, and take some, fairs and farmers market and bring them all together into one central location.
Thank you, Barry. Questions? No questions? Ms. Ortiz.
Hi, good morning. I have some questions about the parking ratio, and we had talked a little bit earlier as well. So the former parking ratio is about, as it exists, was about 4 to 1,000 square feet, correct? I mean, under the current scenario, what we have today.
What we have today is one of the, if you look back at the former approvals, that there was somewhat of a parking reduction in this 2002 application. So it's maybe running about, the total site is probably running about 1 per 200 or so, one space per 200 square feet.
So 5 to 1,000, about.
Right.
I'm just trying to think, so industry standard, I'm trying to compare that to what I'm familiar with. Okay, which is high, and they've acknowledged that because they have a very low utilization rate. So under the current scenario where, and that's including the Sears parking lot, because I imagine, let's look at the site in its entirety. I'd like to understand the parking ratio that they'll end up with if this is approved.
Yeah, more closer to 1 per 300 square feet, which is typical for other projects. More in line with, I believe, the Target, more in line with the food store that we had worked in near Bricktown, which is based on a 1 per 300 parking ratio, or which is about a little over 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet.
Okay, so a little, 4.5 per 1,000, which, I mention that because it is sort of quite high, the direction that we hope to be going to sort of decrease automobile dependence. And I'm just curious, not knowing how many people use alternative forms of transportation to get here, and if, there's anything that is being looked at to encourage that at all.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of bus routes now, and buses are, if you're not on the northeast, your St. George, say, or towards or close to the east or south shores, where there's the only light rail line. The bus service does provide, the bulk of the mass transit service, and so there is very good, mass transit here already. So, people of course can choose if they want to take that instead of drive. Of course, Staten Island is very auto-oriented to begin with. The people around in the surrounding areas have made informal paths into the site, so people do walk, and people do, of course, take the bus. And the analysis has shown that the vast majority of people still do drive.
But it's also a function of how comfortable it is to take those alternative, options. You mentioned that the connection between the bus and the entrance, the bus stop and the entrance, you walk through an active parking lot. And as you mentioned, they've created informal pathways.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, if you make that unappealing, then you're reinforcing,
Yes, and
the option that we're trying to balance, I would say.
yes, and so this particular that picture was this particular photo here is of this bus stop, which now it's in a sea of parking. So it's a room for improvement, and it will be a vast improvement. They will, these dashed red lines are highlighting the pedestrian routes. They'll be able to walk along either of these sidewalks. And a lot of this will also have new vegetation, new trees and planting along the walking paths.
Yeah, I think, overall, it's a nice project. I think one of the issues, they're trying to create a town center, a name only in some ways, and I think it would be nice to recognize that we're trying to encourage, other alternative routes for people who may not have the resources to get there in other ways. And also, youth and kids, I grew up in a suburban community. I remember walking to the mall before I could drive. And so keeping that in mind, particularly as they characterize the space as a public gathering space, I think it would be helpful to sort of share that back.
Mr. Cirillo.
I would just say that just for sort of the big picture, and I think you're right in terms of the direction that, as a matter of policy, the city is looking to move toward. The unfortunate thing, which is very common throughout the borough, is that there is no mass transportation here at all. The only one is a New York City MTA bus, and I do recall, and as somebody who was, I guess, a young teenager when the mall opened, and it was, the greatest thing that ever happened because it was a place to actually go. Although I think that this plan is amazing for the borough and what they're going to bring to it and the thought they've put into it. But getting the bus to get any closer to the mall was a real issue over the years. They sort of detour off Richmond Avenue just to get people inside. It was sort of almost a negotiation, so to speak, because they didn't want to serve. It wasn't that the city was going to serve the mall directly. And I've seen that even at Kings Plaza. I mean, other places I've been where they try to get as close as they can without it being that they're personally, as if they're serving the community. But so that's always going to be a challenge. And I remember even taking the bus as a kid, it still required vehicular pickup because we weren't getting on the bus at 12. Now with the movie theater, which could get out even later than the mall would have been opened as just a retail place, and with all the additional restaurants, food did you mention the fair? Did you mention the concept of the food store? And
Yes.
So the vehicle, which of course is a very big part of the community anyway, we know that. The idea of having access by car is going to be something that I think will always be a challenge for the developments out, everywhere, but you know how I feel about, providing parking. So that I'm acknowledging the fact that it may be, we want to discourage. I guess the upside to this is it is less parking than was there in the first place by a few hundred cars. And I guess that's significant, although I do know what the usage rates are here, and very often the lot is not filled. I mean, the holidays are maybe a different time of the year, and ownership has been very kind to use the spaces for community-related opportunities, fairs and the green market and things like that over time. So it's a really good point. I agree in terms of the direction of the policy, but I think it'll always be a challenge here not to provide, not to recognize the fact that people are going to come with their cars, even if there were 20 other ways of getting there by some means of transportation, other transportation other than the cars. And I should say, a lot of even seniors, they access it by vehicle too. Now, those vehicles may not be parking. Accessoride car services on Staten Island are big. We don't have the same sort of taxi service, although with Uber, but someone on a fixed income may not be using Uber. But it's always about the vehicle, even with the seniors, because getting to the buses once they're home, they're not even close to where the buses are picking up and dropping off. So it's a huge challenge. It'll be interesting to see what the comments are coming back from the community once this goes out there. But I want to acknowledge the point because it's a really good one and very real. I just think we're always going to be stuck with, as much parking as you could put will be as much relief as you'll get people off the roads, I think. It's going to be interesting, but it's really terrific, and sort of the thought and that they're putting into this, kind of bringing it into the new century is going to be very exciting, I think, for the community.
Many years in the works.
Many years.
Mr. Cantor.
Thank you. We are reducing the car count dramatically, and we're increasing the selling areas significantly. How was the analysis made which took those two opposites and said it's okay?
Yeah, because of the amount of leftover parking exists, the amount of parking that is not utilized currently. These photos, I don't know what period this was off the top of my head, but but by going there, it's quite obvious that there's vast parking lots.
I'm not challenging the concept that you have unused space, but what you are doing is diminishing the amount of unused space, creating in turn retail space, which is an attraction. An attraction presumably would create additional vehicles. So
I would suggest that the methodology they use to balance the increased demand for customers to come to this area with the parking needed to accommodate it would be a question that the parking consultant would be able to address when we have our public hearing. They're going to be reviewing the draft EIS at that point in time, so they'd be able to walk us through their
And I think much of this is already contained, at least the projections are contained in the DEIS, which you now have. Ms. Deleuze.
Hi, just one quick question and then just one point. If you could just talk a little bit about any bike connections that are going to be provided here, connecting to the other pieces that were talked about in terms of alternative means of transportation.
Yeah, I think
Especially close to the bike path.
a
right?
good place to look would be, this is the southwest portion of the site. So, there's a new possible destination route for cyclists, just being able to ride continuously along the Springville Greenway. And so there is an existing traffic signal there and crosswalk that would be better utilized now with new walkways. The applicant has indicated that they would, as opposed to creating separate bike lanes on site, they would allow cyclists to use the driveways. And throughout much of the day that this, I found this not to be an intense,
Is there bike
continuous line of cars. So, yes, bike parking is proposed as per the zoning regulations.
And I guess the other piece is just more of a comment that, especially when you look at the slide that shows the landscaping, it's unfortunate that it seems that they couldn't come to terms with Sears to participate in the process, because there's really a dramatic difference between the areas that's new and what's existing.
It's going through its own upheavals right now.
Okay.
Ms. Levin.
Ms. Berry, I just have a process question. There's been reference to an upcoming public hearing on the DEIS, but this is a non-ULURP item. Is the hearing just on I realize the public speakers don't appreciate the difference, but will we be holding a hearing on the applications, or is it just on the EIS?
It's a non-ULURP application. The actions that the applicant, needs and is requesting an authorization, a citywide authorization only. So, yeah.
So it's not formally a
technically-
hearing on that. But will we be the hearing agencies or
Yeah.
agency? It's a city planning commission hearing, not a hearing officer.
We will be using the public hearing form here at the City
Okay,
Planning Commission for
so-
the draft EIS.
Okay, good. So we'll not even remember the difference either, right? Okay, thanks.
And probably no one who actually testifies will know. Any other, Ms. Besser?
Yes, thank you. Just a comment, Barry, that was an excellent presentation, very thorough. Excuse me. The borough president is certainly in favor. We're all excited. It's been a long time coming, and there's challenges with all development, but definitely look forward to the hearing. Thank you.
Okay, this is referred out to the community for 60 days, and community board, and we'll be reconvening as the decider of environmental issues.
Okay, we will not be presenting item number 7, the collegiate school. It's not quite ready for prime time, so we will be bringing that back to you. So our next item is a council modification for 498 Broome Street. You've been distributed the council information, and Edwin Marshall of the Manhattan office is here to walk you through it.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a City Council mod for 498 Broome Street. We have placed a copy of the City Council's mod in your Friday package, as Jim has stated. At left is a photograph of the existing built condition. On February 24th, 2015, the Commission voted to approve a special permit pursuant to Section 74-711 of the zoning resolution to facilitate this project. Next to the photo is a CPC-approved section. The approved special permit would allow residential use on the 2nd through 6th floors, as shown by the red dots, for a total of 4 residential units. As of right, local retail use would be placed on the ground floor, which is located right here. As modified, the building would not have any residential use on the 2nd floor. This is a section of the modified proposal. Again, a section of the modified proposal. Residential use would be allowed on the 3rd through 6th floors, as indicated by the red dots. There would be no residential use placed on the 2nd floor. This modification would reduce the project by 1 residential unit to 3 units and allow as-of-right local retail, commercial office, and storage uses on the 2nd floor. Would also allow as-of-right joint living work quarter for artist units as well, again, on the 2nd floor. Nothing else was modified by the council. Upon review, this city council mod is within scope and does not raise any issues.
Any questions? Mr. Knuckles?
Developer is going to proceed nonetheless?
Yes.
Do we know?
Yes. As far as we know, they're going to proceed and place the residential units on floor 3 through 6 and have the 2nd floor for as-of-right use.
So with that, I will, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Ortiz.
Hi, just one clarification. So it's either or, it's the as-of-right use would either be retail or joint live work quarters, or
It could be anything that's allowed as of right in the M15A district. So it could be local retail, it could be commercial office, it could be a warehouse type of use, or it could be a joint living work quarter for artists.
But they haven't made that determination yet?
No, they have not. The as of right basically gives them the option to have a variety of uses on the site.
And I'm not sure the council could actually direct joint living work quarters for artists. All it can direct is the use group. And that use group is a rather broad use group.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for? With that, I will ask for a show of hands to send a letter to the council that no further review is needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to bring back to you for post-hearing follow-up, the Vanderbilt corridor and 1 Vanderbilt Avenue. Frank Rucala from zoning is here to walk you through it.
This one will be shorter, I promise.
The penultimate recusal by Mr. Cirillo.
No, there's no PowerPoint. Just a couple just quick updates we wanted to give based on some things that we talked about last week. Vanderbilt Hall, this is the transit hall in the northeast corner of the site. One of the things that came up was the door and the location of that door. We are making modifications to the drawings to require that the access actually be from Vanderbilt Place into the transit hall rather than around the corner in 43rd. Additionally, there had been a request from the Borough President's office in their recommendation that effectively until unless the design is fully finalized, that they and the community boards be offered the opportunity to review the final design when that is completed of the transit hall, and either have that or have the opportunity for the review. I think given timing, we think the review time idea makes sense, and so we'll have a effectively a chair certification that they have gone to the community board and the borough president at the time of the final design of the transit hall to ensure that they've done that. That was it from Vanderbilt and 1 Vanderbilt. We had a quick update also just on Greater East Midtown. So, but I thought I'd just kind of, before
So
going
why don't
to
we
that.
pause here, because this will be
Yeah.
coming up for a vote in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Any questions about Vanderbilt Plaza, Vanderbilt Corridor, or 1 Vanderbilt to Frank before he moves on to the larger East Midtown issues? Mr. Cantor.
Just one question, Frank, please. You said they're looking for the community review.
Yeah.
Does that implicitly assume that it's a review and commentary?
I think the intent is that while the drawings particularly get into the specifics of locations of things and has types of materials, it doesn't, that the space would include, it's not yet specifically designed, right? The specific design materials. And so the intent is to actually allow that to be looked at that time.
Well, once again.
And I think really,
something
and
is one thing and opinionating is another thing. And I'm just asking in terms of, are there calendar days that go with that request?
yes, that's the idea, yeah.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean by calendar days that go with that
When
request.
they're making this request, is it going to extend anything in time before the applicant can get his job started?
I think the idea is that before, and this is true of most of the rest of the pieces here, until they're able to pull permits, they're actually required to do a series of things. This would be one of those things. So, yeah, I mean, I think they would time it appropriately to match when they're looking to get their permits.
Upon assuming approval of both 1 Vanderbilt and Vanderbilt Corridor, there's going to be a long time before this project, buildings have to be demolished. There's a huge amount of planning work that has to be done. There's a huge amount of
Right.
of subway work that has to be done. So this is going to be, I don't think any of us view this as interfering with the critical path.
Right, it's not, that's right.
Any other questions? Ms. Levin?
I guess it's my day for process questions as well.
Okay.
Presumably, this change involves a text tweak, and in the previous follow-up, you mentioned that certain other changes would be reflected in the text. Are we to have a revised text distributed to us before the vote?
So I had 2 things. One, this will be in their restrictive deck and drawings rather than the text
this
amendment
will,
itself.
okay.
But then
But
to
other
the-
stuff, right?
Right, to the kind of broader point, there have been a number of changes that the borough president recommended, that we recommended to the commission. Yes, I think in the next few days, we can send an updated version of the text to show that.
Okay, excellent. And then I just want to say publicly, I think the fact that here we are in the third follow-up discussion of probably the most complex application we've seen in a tremendously long time, and we're all sitting here nodding perfectly happy. I think, Frank, it's really a reflection of the excellent work you've done in the previous two follow-ups that have, at least for me, answered all my questions, and I'm just grateful and admiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll also, when this comes back for a vote, we'll have a word to say about the really outstanding work that Frank and Edith and really the entire team at City Planning has engaged in on this. Very, very complicated and really thoughtful effort. So, any other questions about Vanderbilt corridor or one Vanderbilt? Okay. Moving to the larger
So
issue.
we wanted to just give an update of where what we've been calling or had initially been called the Greater East Midtown planning process is at. This is the stakeholder-led planning process chaired by the borough president and Councilmember Dan Garodnick. Has memberships including the community boards 5 and 6, local civic advocacy groups including RPA and MAS, the bids, that's why Fred can't be here, and in addition, a number of other groups, including REBNY and the like. They've had a number of meetings. I think they meet every 2 to 4 weeks, and those meetings have been on kind of a number of topics, talking about landmarking, talking about landmarks, transit needs in the area, kind of general zoning frameworks of the area, and just kind of the overall long-term goals of East Midtown. They are beginning now, actually, the process of identifying recommendations. And the department, as well as other agencies, have been helping both kind of provide information to them that they've been requesting, but also as they're beginning to get to the point of developing recommendations. The idea is that moving forward, they would provide recommendations by some point upcoming in the spring. But I think that the specifics of that exact date they're still working out.
Any other questions?
Yeah, it was meant to be quick, but if there are questions, let us
And
know.
indeed, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank.
Okay.
Very noted.
Short.
Very short.
I have a 45-slide PowerPoint on.
We'll get to that, I'm sure.
Okay. Staff has prepared favorable recommendations for a couple of items that's coming to vote on March 18th. 2702 West 15th Street is a special permit to modify the yard regulations and permit development of a 3-story warehouse in Coney Island. We also have a favorable report on the Stairwell's text amendment. That is to exempt additional exit capacity from zoning floor area for tall non-residential buildings. Also voting on March 18th, a commission certification at 211 McBain Avenue, Staten Island, to subdivide a zoning lot into 2 new zoning lots in an R3X district in order to facilitate the development of a new detached 2-family dwelling, and the briefing package is in your package from this weekend. On March 30th, in addition to Vanderbilt, we will be voting 3941 West 23rd Street, which is special permits to facilitate a mixed-use building with 40 dwelling units, ground floor retail space, and 50 parking spaces. A letter from the applicant was in your package this weekend. Also, we will be voting Cherry Hill Gourmet, a zoning text amendment to the special Sheepshead Bay District to permit a use group 6A food store in Area B of the special district. A letter from Community Board 15 is in your package, as well as a letter from the applicant which was distributed on the dais this morning.
Richard,
Yes.
do you have an update on this saga?
There's an awful lot of paper
more is being distributed. Just in general, you haven't had a chance to read this. It came in, I guess, late Friday. It's a letter from the applicant which addresses some of the concerns of the commission and some of the questions that I had raised of the applicant. Namely, Commissioner De La Luz asked about the status of current marketing efforts, and so I posed that question to the applicant. You can see from their response, it's a sort of general response. It says that they've made good faith efforts. First of all, that Cherry Hill is a tenant, so that they, of course, they're representing Cherry Hill as the applicant, but that they, on the best information and belief, the marketing effort involves online postings, signs at the perimeter of the premises, to lease vacant space on the second floor. They're working on ongoing repairs to the building, both the roof and sprinkler system, and repairing the elevator to make the building more attractive to tenants. That's the extent of their response on marketing. There also were some errors in a prior submission, namely the very large package that was submitted by the applicant, the applicant's rebuttal letter that was dated February 27th. And I think in the package I've given you, I've highlighted in yellow two corrections. One was to the date of the original net lease, and the other was a reference to Sheepshead Bay, the owner, that they would be made available for questions, and which sort of contradicted their neutral position on the application. Of course, there's the larger rebuttal piece that has a transcript attached to it. I don't know how useful it would be to go through the huge package, other than to maybe just summarize some of the material, answer any questions if I could. There's a general letter from the general counsel, again, Mr. Pick, which describes the various ownership arrangements and tenant and subtenant issues. A second letter which talks about the urgency of this application and the various lawsuits and the timeliness of the City Planning Commission reporting and how this is of interest to them, how landmarks violations have since been corrected, and a letter by their architect to that effect. Spot zoning issues, how they refute the case of spot zoning. They also cite a Board of Standards and Appeals case that was adjacent in Area C, which the Board of Standards and Appeals looked at the neighborhood character issue, and they found that that this informed the issue about relevance in the special district to a change in use that wasn't currently permitted. They did a food store study, which essentially said that there aren't, other than a supermarket and a local grocery store that was different than the specialty food store, there's nothing within 1,000 feet of Cherry Hill. They've demonstrated through some photographs how they've improved the building. They've also submitted some DOB history, which I supplemented with some of the, last time I went through the various original reviews and permits, and which was, I felt it was somewhat lacking in their package, so I wrote it out and included attachments so you could see the full picture. And then again, they also included some correspondence they sent to the Brooklyn Borough President. I know it's a voluminous amount of material. If you have any specific questions, I could try to answer, or I could just go on with the rest of what's in the package.
Why don't you stop there, Richard? Record is voluminous, to put it mildly. Questions for Richard? Yes, Ms. Deluz.
So, Richard, I appreciate that you've gone through all of this and helped highlight a number of things to bring them to our attention. I just have a quick question, and then I think it's kind of clear where we're going on the recommendation. But for the chair of CB 15, when this is written, is she really writing as the chair, or is she writing as someone who? Right, okay. It just seems a little interesting how it was on the letterhead of the community board, and yet it was really written more from a personal perspective. So it's not representative of the opinion of the community board. It wasn't voted on, to your knowledge.
Correct. I did include in the most recent package the revote by the community board, which gave actually a numbered vote, 20 in favor, 5 opposed, 2 abstentions. That is the official position of the Community Board, yes, it does strike one as a sort of a personal account of what went on, although interesting, because she
Yeah,
had a bit of a
absolutely
unique
interesting.
perspective as being a
Yes.
tenant in the building and someone who was very active in the community. But I would agree with you that it does seem more of a personal account than an official position of the Community Board.
Okay, thank you for that.
Any other questions for Richard? Okay. Thank you, Richard. Whoop, oh, Ms. Levin.
I guess since this is our last follow-up
Yeah.
discussion before Richard gets to start drafting the report, or maybe he's already started drafting the report. I'm assuming from the tenor of our conversations that we are headed in the direction of allowing the market to continue to be there.
Yes, and I think the sense that I've gotten from all of you is that we do want to see this market continue. It's been a bumpy ride, to say the least, and it's hard to, and probably plenty of errors on many parts. But A, we would like to see this market continue, and B, going forward, we would like to at least identify ways in which it can, if there's a desire at some point to expand, that it establishes or has the opportunity to do so in a, shall we say, a normalized process instead of the process that has happened heretofore. So I think that's the general direction that we're going in.
Good, and by the second part of that, by the normalized process, would that include a public review of expansion plans?
Yeah, I think it would. I
Okay,
mean,
'cause-
there is an opportunity here, given the nature of Lundy's, for it to utilize the provisions of the ability to expand the use based on its landmark status. in the
landmark
building.
status, right.
So there is a process that can be followed, other than a text amendment that legalizes its current activities. Basically, looking to the future, I don't think there really needs to be any new provisions that would allow it to proceed in a normalized way, and that would require review.
Well, then I would be in favor, I don't know if this is what you're suggesting, but I'd be in favor of allowing the text amendment to put a limitation on square footage in order to, shape it to the size that Cherry Hill Gourmet currently is.
Yeah.
But not allow future conversion of the remaining space
Without going through.
without some sort of
Yeah,
review. Okay.
I think that's definitely the direction we're.
Okay, good. And I also hope that our report will be fairly stern about my concern, I suspect it's shared by many of you, about the course that this application has, the course that the fact that the work was apparently done before serious efforts were made to comply with zoning. I don't know how, that's probably not the most politic way to phrase it, but I think we were presented with some pretty troubling testimony in the public hearing about how this all came to our attention, and we don't want to be issuing approvals that encourage people to ride fast and loose over the zoning rules that are on the books, even if they are obsolete ones.
Agreed, and although I will point out, in this particular instance, there probably were several parties at fault.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that, but
Right.
I think we need to emphasize that troublesome aspect of this application in our approval.
Agreed. So, any other questions for Richard? And any other questions about Cherry Hill? Or any other questions about anything? You want to go back to Staten Island Mall for a minute? With that, I think, is there anything else on our agenda, Mr. Secretary?
There is.
Oh. Damn. What is it?
Almost.
Almost, but not quite there. On April 1st, we will be
Yes, indeed.
considering some items for a vote also.
I didn't see that page. You're absolutely right.
Coming back to the commission for vote will be the Charles R. Drew Early Learning Center and Theodore Jackson Senior Center. We had a hearing on this a couple of weeks ago, and this is an acquisition to facilitate the continued use of the daycare center and senior center. In your package, there is a letter from the applicant which responds to some of the questions that the commission had at the public hearing. Stephen Everett is here to walk you through it if you like.
I don't know if we have to walk through this, because a lot of the issues that are addressed here, we discussed earlier. And I think we had a pretty thorough discussion about this whole area and processing of these leases. So are there any other questions for Stephen specifically on this lease? Ms. Young?
I do have one follow-up question on this, and I think this applies obviously more generally, but since this is where we discussed it to begin with, you know, I really appreciate the write-up of the process. I thought it was really helpful. I think that in light of some of what we discussed today, maybe understanding some of the durations would be nice also. But just in looking at sort of the who does what that's outlined here in these answers, it does seem that nobody's doing any energy management on, you know, whether decast or otherwise. And I just wanted to understand if that's an accurate reading of these responses.
I'm not aware of an energy management component either, but I understand that as a broader issue, decast will be here on Wednesday, so I'm not sure if this is an issue that has come up in other applications. I'm not aware of it being handled in this one as part of the scope of work, in either the landlord or the tenant aspect, but I can follow up for you.
And I would just say, I think that it's certainly a correct observation, and my guess is that there probably isn't any energy management, but to a large extent, that is a product of the nature of these relationships between the city, DCAS, and these small private owners where the city is a limited tenant, and there's the whole issue of who is responsible for what under any particular lease, and split leases of both in terms of what party is responsible for making energy savings investments, and then, given the nature of these leases, which party is the beneficiary of the savings whenever there's energy savings, whether in emissions or in costs or both, is, as you know probably better than I do, a nettlesome issue, which is another reason why it would be good to see some of these leases migrate from where they've been for the last 40 years to more modern developments. So, any other thoughts or questions to Stephen, to the secretary? Ms. Levin?
Yeah, I would just observe that the last paragraph of the DCAS letter raises a question for future conversation, which suggests that the landlord really only gets to look at reviewing the scope of work after the lease has been signed. That's when they inspect the site conditions and really get refined about the scope of work. So it feeds into the whole line of questions. I'm not totally satisfied with this answer, and
Agreed.
obviously we're going to talk about it more.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a productive, hopefully productive, avenue of discussion with DCAS more generally, because the city doesn't have all that much leverage after the lease has been signed.
That's
so
right.
It's,
Yeah. So
these
thank you
things
for
should really
thank
be
you for writing this
decided in-
DCAS, but it raises
Right.
more questions than it answers.
And the kind of issues that would be involved in sort of energy-related matters, you'd need to have in most cases, you'd need the landlord involved in that, because a tenant may be able to do some things, but it may involve a bigger project and a bigger capital project than just one space that might be leased in an entire building. So
But in this
what
scope of
tenant?
work that we've seen, I mean, there have been like substantial common resources, right? Like we've seen boiler stuff, we've seen ventilation, lighting. I mean, those
But
are all
Yes and no. I mean, we see it from time to time in the proposed scope of work. Whether it ever gets incorporated into the final scope of work or it gets incorporated as an appendix to the lease, which is normally what would happen in a lease renewal, is just unclear. And I think it's sort of, as I said earlier, we don't want to micromanage what DCAS does on the one hand, but we do want to assure that the assurances we get are real and realized on the other. So it's an issue.
Okay, also coming to vote on April 1st is New Roads Plaza, which is a UDAP designation and special permit to apply community facility FAR to a nonprofit institution with sleeping accommodations. In your package, you received a package from Sobro to address some of the outstanding issues from the public hearing a couple of weeks ago, including details on the cogeneration equipment. Last item for April 1st is 1561 Walton Avenue, an acquisition and UDAP designation project approval to facilitate the construction of 60 units of affordable housing.
Ms. Zhang?
I'm sorry. So, very much appreciate again the follow-up. There were just a few little things that I think I didn't actually see any of the that I was hoping they would include, so I can repeat what those were. And then I think the issue, they put in a lot of information about the codes, which is great. But I think the main question is if they're really depending on the cogen to deliver a lot of the energy performance pieces, then I think the original question was like, have they verified that there's gas availability to be able to put in a cogen system of whatever scale they're envisioning, so.
We will follow up.
I don't know, Carol?
Provide gas availability to,
Right. To be able
just
to
to
do
support
this
the cogen,
amazing
okay.
cogen thing that they want to do, and then, I think it was heating index, energy use intensity, and gallons per bedroom of water. Those are the metrics that, estimates for what they are shooting for.
to support the cogen. Okay. I don't know that, so I will ask.
But isn't that part of the feasibility study, though? Isn't that typically part of the feasibility study for the cogen?
Whether you have gas lines or not?
Sufficient as backup?
I mean, there's a lot that goes on into that, right? But if, for example, if there's just, it seems like it's a sort of relatively binary kind of a thing to be like, well, there is either there's existing gas service there, or there isn't existing gas service there, right? Because, I mean, there are parts of the Bronx that just don't have gas lines. Or sites, I should say, specific sites that don't have trouble getting gas lines.
Parts of, all parts of the city. Little areas where it's really hard. Do we know, Carol?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I am done.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. See you all on Wednesday.